Hello and welcome. If you're running a business, the idea of global sourcing has probably crossed your mind. But let's be honest, getting it right, that's a huge challenge. Today, we are going to crack that code. We're moving way beyond just a simple online search to actually build a strategic, resilient sourcing operation. Let's dive in.
So let me ask you this. When you think global sourcing, does your mind immediately jump to a site like Alibaba? Yeah? You're not alone. It's kind of the default for so many people. But treating it as the only step, that can open you up to a world of risk and leave a lot of money on the table. What if I told you there's a much smarter, way more strategic way to play this game?
Because here's the thing, true global sourcing isn't just a transaction. It's not a one-and-done deal. It's a strategic journey. And, like any great adventure, you're going to need a map. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. The roadmap for navigating this whole overseas labyrinth successfully. So here's our map. We're going to start by going beyond Alibaba with strategic sourcing. Then we'll talk about building what I call the Trust Triad to find real allies. After that, we'll get into navigating the labyrinth of logistics, putting your eyes on the ground for quality control, and finally, how to scale your success for the long haul. All right, part 1, strategic sourcing. Look, your quest for that perfect product doesn't start with firing off an email to a supplier. No, it begins way before that, with smart, targeted research. Just think about the difference for a second. The old Alibaba-only approach, it kind of traps you in this super crowded marketplace with insane competition. But a strategic approach, it totally flips the script. It's all about finding those untapped niche markets, finding truly specialized suppliers, the real experts, and giving yourself a genuine competitive edge. So how do you find those hidden gems? Well, you use the tools the pros use. We're talking about data powerhouses like Statista and IBISWorld. These can show you market trends before they even happen. But hey, don't just hide behind your screen. Getting out to industry trade shows is where you can find those amazing suppliers that your competitors will literally never find online. Okay, let's move on to our second section. Once you've got a list of potential partners, everything, and I mean everything, is about building the Trust Triad. This is that critical human element, finding allies you can really truly count on. And that trust, it's built on 2 really solid pillars. First, you've got to build genuine rapport. We're talking open communication, video calls, because when a problem hits, you need a partner, not just some faceless vendor. And second, you have to vet them thoroughly. This isn't about being suspicious, it's just smart business, protecting your investment. Verify everything. Because remember this, a partnership built on trust isn't just a nice to have. It is your single greatest asset out there in the global marketplace. Seriously, it's the foundation for everything else you're going to do. All right, now for the part that can feel a little intimidating, navigating the labyrinth. We're talking about mastering the really technical side of things, logistics, customs, finance. But don't worry, it's totally navigable once you know the rules. First up, Incoterms. Okay, it sounds super complex, but the idea is actually really simple. These are just internationally agreed upon rules that spell out who's responsible for the goods at every single stage of shipping. Really, what this all boils down to is clarifying who pays for what, and, maybe most importantly, when all that risk officially transfers from the seller over to you. Let's look at a few of the most common ones you'll see. With FOB, or free on board, your responsibility kicks in the second those goods are loaded onto the ship. With DDP, delivered duty paid, the seller handles pretty much the whole shebang until it gets right to your door. You can see how understanding these differences has a massive impact on your final costs and your liability. And what about protecting your money? That is where hedging comes in. You know how volatile currency exchange rates are? They can literally wipe out your profit margins overnight. Hedging, using things like forward contracts, lets you lock in an exchange rate today for a transaction that's going to happen in the future. It gives you stability and, honestly, a lot of peace of mind. So, you've found a supplier, you've built trust, you've figured out the logistics. Awesome. But how do you make sure the product quality is there when you're thousands of miles away? Well, that brings us to section 4, being your own eyes on the ground. I need to be absolutely crystal clear on this point. Pre-shipment inspections are completely non-negotiable. This is where you, or a third-party service you hire, inspect the goods before they leave the factory. It is your single best defense against getting a shipping container full of junk.
A really professional approach, like this one here from Mondoro, actually involves two phases. First, there's a Dupro inspection. This happens during production, and its whole purpose is to catch problems early. And that's crucial, right? It's so much easier to fix something on the assembly line than after it's all finished. Then you do a final, super detailed inspection before anything gets packed up to ship.
And let's be clear about what thorough actually means. We're not talking about spot checking a few items here and there. Nope. We're talking about inspecting between 80 and 100% of your entire order. Yeah, I know, that's a huge number. But that level of commitment, that's your only real guarantee against failure. It is the difference between confidence and catastrophe.
Okay, let's look at the final piece of this puzzle. You've mastered the process for one product. That's fantastic, but how do you scale that into a successful, resilient global brand? That's what we're focusing on in our final section.
The real key to long-term growth is resilience. That means you never ever put all your eggs in one basket. By diversifying your supply chain across different regions, you're not just finding new suppliers, you're basically building a fortress against disruption. It's about creating an operation that's so flexible, it can handle anything the world throws at it, and that includes the messy reality of international returns. And scaling successfully also means you've got to be looking over the horizon. There are 3 huge innovations that are already changing the game. Think about blockchain, offering total transparency from start to finish, or sustainability shifting from just a buzzword to a real requirement, and automation streamlining, well, pretty much everything. These aren't just trends, folks. They're the new table stakes. So the big takeaway here is this. Embracing these new technologies isn't just about trying to be modern. It's about survival. It's about leadership. The businesses that get a handle on them now are going to be the ones that define the global marketplace of tomorrow. So we've laid out the entire map for you. We've shown you how to navigate this